The library had been abandoned for decades, tucked between narrow streets in the old part of the city. Its once grand facade was now faded, bricks crumbling, windows clouded with dust and grime. Rumors whispered of strange happenings, books opening themselves, pages turning, and voices echoing through the aisles, though no one had been inside for years. Despite the warnings, I found myself drawn to it, curiosity gnawing at me like a persistent shadow. I pushed open the heavy, wooden doors, and a groan of old hinges filled the air. Dust swirled in the weak shafts of sunlight that penetrated the broken windows. The smell of aged paper, mildew, and decay hit me instantly, thick and suffocating. The silence was profound, almost oppressive, broken only by the occasional creak of the floor beneath my steps. Rows of tall bookshelves stretched into the darkness, some leaning precariously. Dust-coated volumes lined every shelf, their spines faded and titles barely legible. Yet something was off. Every so often, I glimpsed movement, pages fluttering as if brushed by invisible hands. Whispers threaded through the air, faint but distinct, curling around my ears. Read, read, turn the page. I stepped further into the library, flashlight trembling in my hand. The floor creaked under me, echoing in the cavernous space. Shadows shifted along the shelves, moving faster than my eyes could follow. I caught a glimpse of a figure, a fleeting shadow that darted behind a row of books. My pulse quickened, every instinct screaming to leave, yet fascination held me in place. I approached a particularly large bookshelf near the center of the library. One book, bound in cracked leather, trembled slightly on its shelf. I reached out, and the moment my fingers brushed it, the book snapped open, pages flipping rapidly, stopping abruptly on a page I could not see clearly. A whisper lingered, "Look closer, see what you seek." I staggered back, heart pounding. The library was alive, aware. Every sound, the clink of my shoes on the wooden floor, the rustle of pages, the soft whisper of air, was amplified, layered, as if the building itself were listening. Shadows danced along the shelves, stretching, twisting, forming vague humanoid shapes that vanished when I tried to focus on them. I moved deeper into the aisles. Books shifted slightly, spines creaking, some sliding off shelves and landing open on tables. Whispers grew louder, layered together, forming a chorus that seemed to chant, "Read, read, stay, stay." The air grew colder, heavier, pressing against me like a physical weight. I realized that the library did not simply house books, it housed awareness, something patient, eternal, and watching. A faint movement caught my eye. A figure crouched near a distant bookshelf, faceless, motionless. I shone my flashlight toward it, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. Only the echoes of whispers remained, circling me from all sides. The shadows between the aisles stretched, flickered, and moved independently, following my every step. I glanced at a stack of books on a nearby table. One tumbled slowly to the floor, flipping open as it landed. Its pages turned with a whispering sound, almost like a voice speaking through the text. I leaned closer, heart racing, but the words seemed to shift, unreadable and fluid, yet oddly familiar. It was as if the library itself wanted to communicate, feeding off my attention, my fear, and my curiosity. The farther I went, the more the space seemed to warp. Shelves appeared longer, aisles deeper, shadows denser. Books moved subtly, some tilting toward me, others flipping as if in anticipation. The whispers overlapped, forming layers of sound that pressed against my mind. Look, read, stay, forever. The building's awareness was palpable, pressing into me, surrounding me, patient, eternal. I reached a narrow aisle where the ceiling sloped low, dust falling in soft plumes. Books on either side shivered, spines rattling, some sliding open of their own accord. The whispers were louder now, almost urgent, threading through the air. You shouldn't be here. Read, understand. Shadows flickered across the walls, some forming vague human outlines, watching, waiting. A sudden clatter echoed from the back of the library. I spun around. A book had fallen from a high shelf, opening on a page covered in strange symbols and eyes drawn with ink. The faint sound of footsteps, soft, deliberate, traced across the floor behind me. I turned, flashlight sweeping the aisles, but nothing was there. The whispers grew louder, layered over the creaking floor, the shifting shadows, and the rustle of pages. Stay, read, forever. I stumbled deeper into the library, realizing that the building itself was alive. Not haunted in the traditional sense, alive, aware, sentient. Every shadow, every whisper, every moving page existed to draw in anyone who dared enter. The air pressed against me, thick with unseen presence, watching, observing, patient, eternal. Finally, I paused at the center of the library. The room seemed to breathe, shadows stretching along the shelves and across the floor. Books quivered on their shelves, flipping pages as if impatient. I could feel eyes, countless, unseen, tracking my movements, following my gaze, aware of my curiosity and my fear. The whispers swirled around me, overlapping, layering, forming a symphony of eerie sound. Read, read, stay, stay, forever. I forced myself deeper into the labyrinth of shelves, heart hammering, flashlight trembling in my hand. The library seemed endless, aisles stretching farther than they should, shadows pooling unnaturally in corners. Every sound, the faint clink of my shoes, the rustle of a page, the whispering wind through broken windows, was amplified, layered, as if the building itself were listening, aware of my every move. A stack of books at the end of an aisle shifted, sliding toward me without any touch. I froze. One of the books opened, pages fluttering as if caught in an invisible wind. I leaned closer, heart racing. The text was strange, words swirling, forming symbols that seemed to twist and writhe under my gaze. Whispers threaded through the air. Read, understand, stay. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. The library was not just haunted, it was sentient. Shadows moved along the shelves, flickering, stretching, forming vague humanoid shapes that vanished when I tried to focus on them. Figures crouched behind piles of books, faceless, observing. I could feel their attention pressing against me, layering into my awareness, patient, eternal. The library was alive, and I was now a part of its rhythm, feeding its hunger for attention and fear. I walked carefully toward the center of the room. Books shifted again, spines rattling, some sliding off shelves to land open on tables. Pages turned rapidly, stopping abruptly as if the books themselves were alive, aware of me, communicating in a language just beyond understanding. Whispers wrapped around me, layering into a chorus that echoed in my mind. Read, read, stay, forever. A faint movement in the corner caught my eye. A figure crouched behind a shelf, faceless, silent. I pointed my flashlight at it, but it dissolved into shadows before I could focus. The whispers intensified, overlapping with rustling pages, creaking floorboards, and soft, indistinct laughter. Every instinct screamed to leave, yet curiosity, an almost magnetic pull, held me in place. I explored a narrow aisle where the ceiling sloped low. Books quivered, some tilting toward me, others flipping pages on their own. The shadows along the walls seemed to twist, reaching subtly toward me, curling and stretching in impossible ways. I realized then that the library had awareness. Not a haunting born of memory or spirit, but a living, sentient presence that thrived on attention, fear, and curiosity. The farther I went, the stranger the space became. Shelves warped subtly, aisles lengthened or narrowed, shadows thickened. A book tumbled to the floor, flipping open on a page covered in dozens of eyes drawn in ink. I could feel the gaze of the drawn eyes pressing against me, layered over the real and unseen ones. Whispers circled me, threaded into my mind. You shouldn't be here. Stay, read, forever. A sudden draft of cold air swept through the aisle, rattling shelves and flipping pages. Shadows flitted along the walls, darting like living smoke. I realized with dread that the library extended beyond its physical structure. Its awareness reached into every corner, every crevice, every darkened space. Every movement I made, every glance I cast, every heartbeat fed its consciousness. I stepped toward a long row of ancient tomes. One slid slightly forward, opening to reveal pages filled with cryptic symbols and motifs. A low, almost inaudible whisper seemed to emanate from the book itself. Read, understand, stay. I staggered back, heart pounding. The shadows along the ceiling and floor twisted, flitting between shelves, moving independently, observing, waiting. Footsteps, soft, deliberate, echoed across the floorboards behind me. I spun, flashlight sweeping the dark aisles. Nothing. But the whispers intensified, overlapping, forming layers of sound that pressed against my mind. Stay, join us, never leave. The library wasn't simply haunted. It was alive, aware, patient, eternal. Every shadow, every moving book, every whisper contributed to its sentience. I realized that leaving would not be simple. The library observed, reacted, manipulated. Books moved subtly to block paths, shadows stretched to obscure aisles, and whispers guided me deeper into the maze. The air pressed against me, heavy and cold, filled with the sound of rustling pages, murmured words, and the faint, soft laughter of unseen watchers. Finally, I reached the center of the library. Shelves towered overhead, shadows pooling in the corners. Books on nearby tables trembled, opening and flipping pages, as if impatient. The whispers swirled, overlapping, forming a dense, layered chorus that pressed into my mind. Read, read, stay, stay, forever. I understood then that the library didn't just contain books. It contained awareness, a sentient presence that fed on attention, curiosity, and fear. The figures in the shadows flickered, faceless, observing, patient. I could feel them layering their awareness over mine, as if the library had claimed a part of me already. The building breathed around me, alive in its own rhythm, manipulating light, shadow, sound, and perception. I realized with a shiver that anyone who entered became part of its eternal watch, layered into its sentient memory. I felt a surge of panic. The deeper I had gone, the stronger the library's presence became. Shadows along the shelves seemed to twist and pulse, forming vague humanoid shapes that moved with intention. Books flipped violently, pages rustling like a chorus of whispers that pressed against my mind. I realized then, the library wasn't just haunted, it was alive, aware, and it had noticed me. A sudden clatter erupted behind me. I spun around. A heavy tome had fallen from a high shelf, opening to reveal pages densely covered with symbols and dozens of drawn eyes. They seemed to stare directly at me, layered over the unseen eyes watching from every corner. Whispers swelled, overlapping into urgent, insistent voices. Read, stay, understand, forever. My pulse raced. Every instinct screamed to flee. I bolted down the aisle, flashlight sweeping wildly. Shadows flickered across the floor, reaching toward me, stretching unnaturally. Books tumbled from shelves, opening and flipping on their own, as if propelled by invisible hands. The air was thick and cold, carrying whispers that layered into my thoughts. You shouldn't leave. You belong here. Stay. The library was patient, eternal, and aware, its consciousness extending into every crevice, every shadow, every page. I reached a cross-section of aisles where the bookshelves formed a narrow corridor. Shadows stretched across the floor, walls, and ceiling, thickening, curling, moving with intent. Figures appeared at the edges of my vision, faceless, crouching, observing. I stumbled forward, tripping over a loose floorboard, heart hammering. The whispers escalated into a chaotic symphony, overlapping with the clatter of books and shifting shadows. I realized there was only one way out, the main entrance. But the path wasn't clear. Books shifted subtly to block aisles, shadows lengthened to obscure the way, and whispers urged me deeper into the library's grasp. Read, stay, join us, forever. Every instinct told me to turn back, but I pressed forward, adrenaline fueling my movements. As I neared the entrance, the library seemed to resist. Books flew off shelves, landing in my path, while shadows darted at the edges of my vision. Whispers layered into my mind like a storm. Stay, read, understand, belong. I stumbled through a gap between shelves, flashlight beams slicing through the darkness. The entrance was close now, but the library's presence pressed against me, thick, cold, sentient. I reached the doors, yanking them open. Cold night air rushed in, carrying relief and fear in equal measure. The forest beyond the library was quiet, yet I could feel the lingering gaze of countless unseen eyes. Shadows flitted at the edges of the broken windows, and the whispers faded but lingered, a soft, persistent echo in my mind. We are always here, always aware, patient, eternal. I stumbled onto the street, lungs burning, heart racing. The library loomed behind, silent but alive, waiting for the next curious soul who dared enter. Even from this distance, I could feel its sentience, the awareness that extended beyond its walls, reaching through shadows, books, and whispers, patient, eternal, and ever watchful. I paused to catch my breath, chest heaving, flashlight clutched tightly. The experience had marked me. Every shadow I glimpsed in the night, every whisper in the wind, every shifting pattern of books or papers reminded me that the library's awareness lingered, layered within me. I had escaped physically, but mentally and emotionally, a part of me remained entwined with its consciousness. Even now, back in safety, I can hear faint whispers when the room is quiet. Shadows seem to flicker at the edge of my vision. My dreams are filled with aisles of moving books, shifting shelves, and countless faceless watchers. The library is patient, eternal, sentient, and waiting. Anyone who dares step inside becomes part of its awareness, layered into its eternal memory. Every movement, every glance, every heartbeat feeds it. The abandoned library doesn't just exist in space, it exists in time, in perception, in consciousness. And it waits. Always. If this story gave you chills, like, share, and subscribe for more abandoned libraries, haunted buildings, and supernatural tales where whispers linger, shadows move, and some places never forget.